Recep Tayyip Erdoğan's life story is one of remarkable transformation, from modest beginnings to the heights of political power. Born in Istanbul in 1954, Erdoğan's early life was a world away from the grandeur of the presidential palace he would later occupy. He spent his childhood in Kasımpaşa, a working-class neighborhood steeped in the traditions of Turkish life. Even in his youth, Erdoğan displayed a strong work ethic, selling lemonade and simit, a sesame-covered bread, to help support his family. This early experience instilled in him a deep connection with the everyday struggles of ordinary Turks, a connection that would later become a cornerstone of his political identity. Erdoğan's ambition extended beyond the bustling streets of Kasımpaşa. He excelled in his studies, attending a religious high school before pursuing higher education at Marmara University's Faculty of Economics and Commercial Sciences. It was during this period that his interest in politics began to blossom. The political landscape of 1970s Turkey was turbulent, marked by ideological clashes and social unrest. In this charged atmosphere, Erdoğan found his voice, joining the National Salvation Party, an Islamist political party. This marked the beginning of his long and tumultuous journey through the corridors of Turkish politics. Erdoğan's charisma and powerful oratory skills quickly propelled him through the ranks of the party. He became a prominent figure in Istanbul's political scene, known for his fiery speeches that resonated with the city's conservative and working-class residents. His rise, however, was not without its obstacles. The military coup of 1980 cast a long shadow over Turkish politics, resulting in the closure of political parties, including the National Salvation Party. Erdoğan, like many others, found himself temporarily sidelined from active politics. The setback did not deter him. It was during this period that he honed his political acumen, working as a manager at a private company while simultaneously engaging in intellectual and political discussions with like-minded individuals. The seeds of his future political vision, one that sought to combine Islamic values with democratic principles, were sown during these years. The military's grip on power began to loosen, paving the way for a return to civilian rule. Erdoğan, sensing an opportunity to re-enter the political arena, joined the Welfare Party, the successor to the banned National Salvation Party. The Welfare Party, with its focus on social conservatism and economic justice, resonated with a significant segment of Turkish society. Erdoğan's popularity continued to grow within the party, and in 1994, he achieved a significant milestone by winning the mayoral election in Istanbul. At the time, Istanbul was a sprawling metropolis grappling with poverty, inadequate infrastructure, and a sense of neglect. Erdoğan, with his characteristic vigor and hands-on approach, set about transforming the city. As mayor, Erdoğan initiated a series of ambitious projects aimed at improving the lives of Istanbul's residents. He tackled the city's chronic water shortage by investing heavily in infrastructure, ensuring a reliable water supply for millions. He modernized public transportation, expanding bus routes and introducing new ferry lines, making it easier for people to commute and access essential services. Perhaps his most enduring legacy as mayor was his focus on environmental issues. Erdoğan spearheaded efforts to clean up Istanbul's polluted air and waterways, planting millions of trees and transforming neglected areas into green spaces. These initiatives not only improved the city's environment, but also enhanced its aesthetic appeal. His tenure as mayor was not without its critics, who accused him of favoring religious institutions and promoting a conservative agenda. However, his tangible achievements in improving the lives of ordinary Istanbul residents earned him widespread popularity, solidifying his image as a capable and effective leader. Erdoğan's success in Istanbul caught the attention of the national political stage. The Welfare Party, riding on his popularity, emerged as a significant force in Turkish politics. However, their rise was met with suspicion by the secularist establishment, which viewed the party's Islamic leanings with apprehension. In 1997, the military, still wielding considerable influence behind the scenes, orchestrated a post-modern coup, forcing the Welfare Party government to resign. Erdoğan's time as mayor of Istanbul from 1994 to 1998 was a pivotal period that showcased his leadership qualities and laid the foundation for his future political ascent. Istanbul, a sprawling metropolis of over 10 million people at the time, faced numerous challenges, including chronic water shortages, inadequate infrastructure, and environmental degradation. Erdoğan, with his characteristic pragmatism and determination, tackled these problems head-on, earning him praise from Istanbul residents and establishing his reputation as a capable administrator. One of his most notable achievements was addressing Istanbul's long-standing water crisis. The city had been plagued by water shortages for years, with residents often experiencing dry taps and rationing. Erdoğan invested heavily in infrastructure, building new dams, reservoirs, and pipelines to increase the city's water supply. This massive undertaking, completed in a remarkably short period, ensured a reliable flow of water to millions of households, significantly improving their quality of life. Beyond water, Erdoğan focused on improving Istanbul's public transportation system, which was struggling to keep up with the city's rapid growth. He expanded bus routes, introduced new ferry lines connecting different parts of the city, and improved the efficiency of existing tram lines. These measures made it easier for residents to commute, reducing traffic congestion and improving access to essential services. Erdoğan's emphasis on public transportation was not just about convenience. It was also about improving the lives of working-class residents who relied heavily on affordable transportation options. Erdoğan's tenure as mayor also witnessed a significant transformation of Istanbul's environmental landscape. The city had been grappling with severe air pollution, largely due to heavy traffic and industrial emissions. Erdoğan implemented strict environmental regulations, introduced cleaner fuels for public transportation, and invested in tree planting campaigns to improve air quality. He also spearheaded efforts to clean up Istanbul's Golden Horn, a historic waterway that had become heavily polluted. These initiatives, combined with his focus on creating green spaces and parks, significantly enhanced Istanbul's environment and livability. The military's intervention in 1997, which led to the downfall of the Welfare Party government, had a profound impact on Turkish politics and Erdoğan's own trajectory. The secularist establishment viewed the Welfare Party's growing popularity and its Islamic orientation with deep suspicion, fearing that it posed a threat to Turkey's secular order. The military, still a powerful force in Turkish politics, intervened, forcing the government to resign and paving the way for its eventual closure by the Constitutional Court. Erdoğan, a rising star within the Welfare Party, became a target of the crackdown. He was charged with inciting religious hatred for reciting a poem that included the lines, "The mosques are our barracks, the domes are helmets, the minarets are bayonets, and the faithful are soldiers." This event, a defining moment in Erdoğan's political journey, showcased the deep fault lines that existed within Turkish society between the secularist elite and the rising tide of political Islam. Erdoğan's imprisonment in 1998, while a major setback, paradoxically bolstered his image among his supporters. His imprisonment was widely seen as politically motivated, an attempt by the secularist establishment to silence a popular leader who challenged the status quo. The image of Erdoğan, a charismatic politician who had demonstrably improved the lives of ordinary citizens, being jailed for reciting a poem, resonated with many Turks who felt increasingly alienated from the country's secular elites. His imprisonment, far from diminishing his political career, transformed him into a symbol of defiance against what many perceived as the authoritarian tendencies of the secularist establishment. He emerged from prison more popular than ever, his image burnished by a sense of martyrdom. The experience also hardened his resolve to challenge the status quo and to create a more inclusive political system that would accommodate Turkey's diverse social fabric. Section 5. The dawn of the AKP era. The closure of the Welfare Party in 1998 created a vacuum in Turkish politics. It also provided an opportunity for a new generation of political leaders to emerge, leaders who sought to reconcile Turkey's Islamic identity with its democratic aspirations. Erdoğan, fresh out of prison and with his popularity soaring, was uniquely positioned to capitalize on this moment. He, along with other former members of the Welfare Party, founded the Justice and Development Party, or AKP, in 2001. The AKP, while rooted in Turkey's conservative and religious traditions, presented itself as a moderate and reformist party committed to democratic principles and the rule of law. It distanced itself from the more radical elements of political Islam, emphasizing its commitment to secularism and a pluralistic society. This strategic positioning, combined with Erdoğan's charisma and his ability to connect with the aspirations of ordinary Turks, proved to be a winning formula. The 2002 general elections marked a watershed moment in Turkish politics. The AKP, led by Erdoğan, won a landslide victory, securing a two-thirds majority in parliament. This resounding victory was a clear indication of the public's desire for change, for a break from the old guard and their perceived elitism and corruption. It also reflected a growing sense of frustration with the country's economic woes and the perceived inability of traditional parties to address them. The AKP's victory ushered in a new era in Turkish politics, one in which conservative and religious voices, long marginalized by the secularist establishment, gained a prominent role in shaping the country's future. It also marked the beginning of Erdoğan's long tenure as Turkey's paramount leader, a period characterized by both remarkable achievements and growing concerns about authoritarianism. Erdoğan's journey from the streets of Kasımpaşa to the Prime Minister's office was complete, but the challenges and complexities of governing a nation as diverse and strategically important as Turkey were only just beginning. Section 6. Economic Reforms and Global Engagement. Upon assuming the office of Prime Minister in 2003, Erdoğan and the AKP government embarked on an ambitious program of economic reforms and a more assertive foreign policy, aiming to elevate Turkey's standing on the world stage. The country at the time was grappling with a fragile economy, high inflation, and a legacy of political instability that had deterred foreign investment. Erdoğan, recognizing the need for economic stability as a prerequisite for progress, prioritized reforms aimed at liberalizing the economy, attracting foreign investment, and improving living standards. One of the key pillars of Erdoğan's economic policy was his focus on fiscal discipline and macroeconomic stability. His government implemented structural reforms, reducing government bureaucracy, privatizing state-owned enterprises, and tackling chronic inflation. These measures, coupled with a favorable global economic climate, yielded impressive results. Turkey's economy experienced robust growth, inflation was brought under control, and foreign investment poured in, fueling a period of unprecedented economic prosperity. Erdoğan's economic reforms extended beyond macroeconomic management. He also prioritized social spending, particularly in areas such as healthcare, education, and infrastructure. His government implemented a universal healthcare system, expanded access to education, and invested heavily in infrastructure projects, including roads, bridges, and airports. These investments not only improved the lives of ordinary citizens, but also contributed to Turkey's economic growth by creating jobs and boosting productivity. In the realm of foreign policy, Erdoğan sought to shed Turkey's traditional cautious approach, adopting a more assertive and independent stance. He positioned Turkey as a bridge between the East and West, leveraging its strategic location at the crossroads of Europe, Asia, and the Middle East to enhance its diplomatic influence. His government actively engaged in regional diplomacy, playing a mediating role in conflicts in the Middle East and strengthening ties with countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Section 7. Shadows of Authoritarianism and Dissent. While Erdoğan's early years in power were marked by economic progress and a more assertive foreign policy, his tenure also witnessed growing concerns about authoritarianism and a crackdown on dissent. As his grip on power consolidated, critics argued that Erdoğan's style of governance became increasingly intolerant of opposing viewpoints, leading to a shrinking space for free speech, a free press, and political opposition. One of the most significant turning points in Erdoğan's relationship with the media came in 2013 with the Gazi Park protests. What began as a small-scale demonstration against the redevelopment of a park in central Istanbul quickly escalated into nationwide protests against Erdoğan's government, fueled by a growing sense of discontent over what many perceived as his authoritarian tendencies, his attempts to impose conservative values on society, and his increasingly heavy-handed approach to dealing with criticism. The Gazi Park protests, named after the park that served as the initial focal point of the demonstrations, represented a broad coalition of grievances against Erdoğan's rule. Protesters came from diverse backgrounds, united by their opposition to what they perceived as Erdoğan's increasingly authoritarian style of governance, his attempts to silence critical voices in the media, and his government's heavy-handed response to the initial protests. The protests, which spread to cities across Turkey, were met with a forceful response from the government, with police using tear gas, water cannons, and rubber bullets to disperse demonstrators. The government's crackdown on the Gazi Park protests drew widespread international condemnation, with human rights groups accusing Turkish authorities of using excessive force and violating the right to peaceful assembly. The protests marked a turning point in Erdoğan's relationship with the West, which had previously praised his economic reforms and Turkey's growing regional influence. The heavy-handed response to the protests, coupled with Erdoğan's increasingly authoritarian tendencies, raised concerns among Western allies about the erosion of democracy and human rights in Turkey. Section 8. From Prime Minister to President. A new era. In 2014, after serving as Prime Minister for over a decade, Erdoğan set his sights on the presidency, a position that had traditionally been largely ceremonial in Turkish politics. However, Erdoğan had made it clear that he envisioned a more active and influential role for the presidency, one that would transform the nature of Turkish politics. His election as president in August 2014, with 52% of the vote, marked a significant shift in Turkish governance, paving the way for a more centralized and powerful presidency. Erdoğan's vision for a more powerful presidency was enshrined in a controversial constitutional referendum held in April 2017. The referendum, narrowly approved with 51.4% of the vote, introduced sweeping changes to Turkey's political system, transforming it from a parliamentary system to an executive presidency. The new system abolished the office of the Prime Minister, transferred executive powers from the parliament to the president, and granted the president greater control over the judiciary and the military. The constitutional changes were met with mixed reactions. Supporters argued that a strong presidency was necessary to provide stability and continuity in a region rife with turmoil and to enable Turkey to pursue its ambitious domestic and foreign policy goals more effectively. They pointed to the economic progress and regional influence Turkey had achieved under Erdoğan's leadership as Prime Minister as evidence of his ability to lead decisively. Opponents, on the other hand, expressed deep concerns about the concentration of power in the hands of the president, arguing that it undermined Turkey's democratic checks and balances and risked creating an authoritarian one-man rule. They pointed to Erdoğan's increasingly authoritarian tendencies, his crackdown on dissent, and his government's control over the media as evidence of the dangers of such a powerful presidency. The referendum, while narrowly approved, exposed the deep divisions within Turkish society over the direction of the country and the future of its democracy. Section 9. Navigating Challenges. The 2016 coup attempt and its aftermath. The 2016 coup attempt, a dramatic and pivotal event in Turkey's recent history, tested the resilience of Erdoğan's rule and had far-reaching consequences for Turkish society. On the night of July 15, 2016, a faction within the Turkish military attempted to seize power, deploying tanks to strategic locations in Istanbul and Ankara, strafing government buildings, and clashing with security forces loyal to the government. The coup attempt, however, was ultimately unsuccessful, failing to garner widespread support within the military or among the Turkish population. Erdoğan, who was on vacation at the time of the coup attempt, addressed the nation via FaceTime, urging citizens to take to the streets and resist the coup plotters. His call to action was met with a groundswell of support, as thousands of people poured onto the streets, confronting the coup plotters and forming human shields around key government buildings. The coup attempt was put down within hours, with security forces loyal to the government regaining control and arresting thousands of suspected coup plotters. The aftermath of the coup attempt was marked by a sweeping crackdown on suspected opponents of the government. Erdoğan, accusing the exiled cleric Fethullah Gulen and his followers of orchestrating the coup attempt, launched a massive purge of the military, judiciary, police, education system, and other state institutions. Tens of thousands of people were arrested, dismissed from their jobs, or had their passports revoked on suspicion of links to the Gulen movement. The government's response to the coup attempt drew criticism from human rights groups who accused Erdoğan of using the event as a pretext to consolidate his power and silence dissent. They argued that the purges went far beyond targeting those involved in the coup attempt, ensnaring journalists, academics, activists, and anyone perceived as critical of the government. The crackdown on dissent, coupled with the constitutional changes that had granted Erdoğan sweeping powers, raised concerns among Western allies about the erosion of democracy and the rule of law in Turkey. Section 10. Erdoğan's legacy, a polarized nation, a transformed political landscape. Recep Tayyip Erdoğan's impact on Turkish politics is undeniable. His legacy etched in the annals of Turkish history as a transformative yet deeply polarizing figure. From his humble beginnings in Istanbul to his long tenure as Turkey's paramount leader, Erdoğan's journey reflects a complex interplay of ambition, political acumen, and a deep connection with a significant segment of Turkish society. His legacy is one of remarkable achievements, economic transformation, and a more assertive foreign policy, but also one marred by concerns about authoritarianism, erosion of democratic norms, and a deeply divided society. Erdoğan's early years in power were marked by a wave of economic reforms that ushered in an era of unprecedented prosperity for Turkey. His government's focus on fiscal discipline, macroeconomic stability, and attracting foreign investment yielded impressive results, lifting millions out of poverty and propelling Turkey onto the world stage as a rising economic power. Erdoğan's economic achievements resonated deeply with a large segment of the Turkish population, particularly those who had felt left behind by previous governments. However, as Erdoğan's grip on power consolidated, so too did concerns about his increasingly authoritarian tendencies. His government's crackdown on dissent, particularly following the Gazi Park protests and the 2016 coup attempt, raised alarm bells both domestically and internationally. Critics accused Erdoğan of using these events as a pretext to silence opposing viewpoints, curtail press freedoms, and undermine the independence of the judiciary. The purges that followed the coup attempt, while targeting some individuals involved in the plot, also ensnared journalists, academics, activists, and anyone perceived as critical of the government. Erdoğan's legacy is ultimately a mixed bag, a complex tapestry woven with threads of both progress and regression. He will be remembered for his economic achievements, his ability to connect with the aspirations of a significant segment of Turkish society, and his efforts to enhance Turkey's standing on the world stage. However, his legacy will also be forever intertwined with his government's crackdown on dissent, the erosion of democratic norms, and the deep polarization that has come to characterize Turkish society.